You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hey, music fans, welcome to Alan's Record Bin. I'm Alan from the Modern Musicology Podcast, and this is a show where I pull records out of my extensive music collection, talk about them a little bit, and spin a few tunes for you. This week, we are talking about a film that came out in 1981, something of a cult classic, and as you may have guessed from hearing the indomitable voice of Mr. Sammy Hagar, that film is Heavy Metal, which was released 45 years ago this week on August 7th, 1981. It featured an iconic soundtrack that included some big names at the time, as well as a few bands you may never have heard of before. So let's jump back to 1981. I was wrapping up my senior year of high school, and I had been the captain of the percussion section in the marching band. And this was a time when my listening tastes were really starting to change, and I was really starting to get into some heavier music. I had been a Kiss fan since 1977 when I had gotten the Love Gun album for my birthday. But after that, the first Van Halen album came out in 1978, and that hit me like a sledgehammer. A school friend introduced me to Rush's Fly By Night album a little bit after that. I had started getting into Alice Cooper and Cheap Trick and Öyster Cult. And in 1980, I discovered Black Sabbath's Heaven and Hell album, which was a game changer for me. I still liked a lot of the artists that I had been into before that, like Heart and Wings and Doobie Brothers and Linda Ronstadt and Fleetwood Mac and all those kind of things. I still really loved those, but my tastes were definitely evolving into something a little bit heavier. So the film, I don't remember ever seeing trailers for Heavy Metal, but I must have, because how else would I have known about it? And this was exactly the kind of thing that I was really starting to get into at the time. A little more edgy, a little more adult. And I've always loved animated films, but this was something really, really different. This was something much more grown up than anything I'd ever seen before. Plus, I was a big science fiction and fantasy fan, so this just really ticked all my boxes. Some friends and I went to see it when it opened, and I know I saw it in the theater at least 3 more times after that, maybe more. I'm not really sure, but I know that I saw it at least 4 times. So let me give you a little background on the film. Heavy Metal was an animated anthology film. It was made up of a series of vignettes linked together by a framing narrative. It was inspired by and partially based on the very adult sci-fi fantasy comic magazine Heavy Metal. Some of the vignettes in the film were based on characters or stories from the magazine, and some were created specifically for the film, particularly the framing narrative. To get the film done quicker, each vignette was farmed out to a different animation studio, which was really cool because it gave each segment its own look and feel. So as you're watching the film, every story that's being told looks and sounds different from all the other ones around it. It was rated R for its graphic violence, sexual content, language, and depictions of drug use. I mean, it hit all the boxes. And I will say that this was very much I hate to be crass, but this was very much a boobs and bush film. being animated, it could get away with some things that maybe a live action film could not have gotten away with, and it really ran with it. It featured the voice acting of Canadian comedy legends like John Candy and Joe Flaherty and Eugene Levy, Alice Payton, Harold Ramis, and a bunch of others. And it had an orchestral score that was composed by the legendary Elmer Bernstein, known for such iconic films as The Ten Commandments, Magnificent Seven, To Kill a Mockingbird, True Grit, Meatballs, Animal House, Airplane. And he would go on to score big smash movies like Trading Places, Ghostbusters, Spies Like Us, Three Amigos. You may have heard of a few of those. He was a big deal in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But the real draw for this film was its soundtrack. Now, unlike what the title would imply, there was very little heavy metal or even hard rock on the album. For instance, it featured Open Arms by Journey, and the soundtrack was released in July 1981, about a month before the film came out, and that's basically right at the same time that Journey's Escape album was released. And of course, Open Arms was released as a single, and it was sort of tied to both of those albums, and it became a monster hit. The soundtrack also featured some great tunes by Don Felder from the Eagles, Donald Fagen from Steely Dan, Stevie Nicks, and some others. And it also featured the reemergence of Grand Funk Railroad, who had disbanded in 1976 when all the members kind of went off to do other things. Their song Queen Bee was included in the movie and was later to be heard on their next studio album, which came out in September. So I want to highlight some of my favorite tracks from the album for you. The first is by a band that I know absolutely nothing about. I had never heard of them at the time that the movie came out. I have never heard of anything. I know that I think they're a German band, and I know they've released a slew of albums, but I have, like, heavy metal is literally the only thing that I know about them. The band is called Riggs, and the song is called Radar Rider, and it isn't actually the first song that you hear in the movie. In the opening segment, which is basically the opening title sequence, it features a space shuttle, which, you know, this is 1981. Space shuttles had not been around for that long, so this was kind of still really new. So the space shuttle is doing a flyby. It's coming up to Earth. I think it's Earth. It might be a different planet. I'm not entirely sure. And its payload bay doors open, and out from it drops a Corvette, which speeds around through space and then eventually lands on the planet and comes up to a house. Anyway, it's a really, really cool little segment. And this song, Radar Rider, is the song that accompanies, and this one of the most prominent songs in the movie. So we're going to give a little listen right now to Radar Rider by Riggs.
Looking for some action. Sure to bang. I need a quick reaction. Cause this lady made me
I don't know, man. I think that's such a cool tune, and certainly the segment of the movie that it accompanies is fast paced and really well animated, and it's just the coolest. So that was Riggs, as I said, with their song Radar Rider. They had another song on the soundtrack also. I've never heard anything from them since then. I should probably look into them a little bit. They might be a great band that I would never know otherwise. So the second song on my list is, like I was saying, Radar Rider is the first song you hear in the movie. Now I want to play something that was at the very end of the movie. In fact, it was the first song that you hear in the closing credits, and that is Devo with their cover of Working in a Coal Mine. Now, that song was written by Alan Toussaint, and it was an international hit for Lee Dorsey in 1966. And of course, like Devo does whenever they do covers, they completely transformed this song. The original is kind of a jazz swing beat kind of thing, and Devo turns it into something very, very different. And if you're familiar with their cover of the Rolling Stones' Can't Get No Satisfaction, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, as the way that they transform a song into something that's so identifiably Devo. So here we are with Devo, their cover of Working in a Coal Mine.
Well, I've been working in a coal mine, going down, down. Working in a coal mine, about to slip down. Working in a coal mine, going down, down. Working in a coal mine, about to slip down. 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm up here for the sun. When my workday is over, too tired for having fun. I've been working in a coal mine.
I love that song. I don't even think I can explain why, but I just love it. And, you know, I remember seeing Devo when they first appeared on Saturday Night Live, and they played Satisfaction, and I hated it. I was like, oh my God, who are these people? And what are they doing to ruin this classic rock and roll song? And of course, now I totally get Devo, and I really appreciate them for who they are and what they do. But man, the first time I heard them do Satisfaction, I was like, no, thank you. And I probably at the time had the same reaction to Coal Mine, but now I absolutely love it. And it's one of my favorite songs in the movie. And one of the ones that I first think of, which is so odd that when I think about the movie Heavy Metal, one of the first songs that comes to mind is Devo. That's crazy. All right, so we're going to take a super quick little break, 30 seconds, no more, no less, and play a little ad from one of the other shows on my network, and we'll be right back with some more great songs from the Heavy Metal soundtrack. Don't go anywhere.
DragonCon is calling, and we're your inside line to the con. Tune in to the DragonCon Report, where we dive headfirst into the personalities and behind-the-scenes stories that bring our beloved con to life, talking with track directors, creators, and more. From panels to performers and cosplay to cocktails, if it's happening at con, we're talking about it. Join us when we live stream, or catch the audio version later wherever you get your podcasts. The DragonCon Report, your home away from con.
All right, thank you so much for sticking around. The next song that I want to play for you from the Heavy Metal soundtrack is Cheap Trick. And they had 2 songs in the movie, actually. The first one is called Reach Out, and this was released as a single from this album and from their Cheap Trick's next album. And this song was co-written by a guy called Pete Comita, and he was the bass player in the band at the time. He had replaced Tom Peterson, the original bass player, in 1980. Now, Comita left the band a little bit later in 1981. He was basically only there for their most recent tour, the tour that they were currently on. So Reach Out is the only Cheap Trick recording to feature him on bass. And Reach Out was included in the Captain Stern segment of the movie. Stern is kind of a space pirate kind of guy, and he's brought before a Galactic Federation court and accused of a huge list of heinous crimes, including murder, rape, piracy, fraud, armed theft, and one moving violation. So at the end of the court, there's a big chase scene, and this is the song that accompanies that. This is Cheap Trick with Reach Out.
You got to do it yourself. Don't be afraid to drive the nail in the wood and break the water to taste so good. You go the distance you never thought that you could. Reach out and take it. Reach out and just take it. Reach out and
Like I said earlier, 1980, 81, that era is when I was really starting to get into Cheap Trick. And it was such a thrill to hear a couple of new Cheap Trick tunes in this movie. And that's a good one, man. That's a great one. Reach Out. So the next one that I want to feature is another band that I was really starting to get into around this time, and that is Blue Öyster Cult. And there's kind of an interesting story behind this one. This is a song called Veteran of the Psychic Wars. And Cult had originally written a song specifically for the movie called Vengeance with the subtitle The Pact. And that one was basically a retelling of the final segment of the movie, the Tarna story. And the producers thought it was just a little too on the nose. They really didn't need a song that was telling the same story that they were telling in the vignette. So they rejected it. And Cult submitted Psychic Wars instead. And it was included in one of the longer segments of the film about a cabbie in a future dystopian New York City. And there's a heist and a car chase, and, bad guys are after him. And it's very gritty, very street, and it's very New York City, but told way in the future. Well, actually, I think it's set in 2031, which isn't that far in the future now that we're talking about it. But 40 years ago, it still seemed very in the future. And it's one of the longer pieces in the film, and it's only one to feature 5 songs. Anyway, let's give it a listen. This is Veteran of the Psychic Wars.
You see me now, veteran of 1,000 psychic wars. I've been living on the edge so long, where the winds of limbo roar. And I'm young enough to look at, and far too old to see. All the scars are on the inside. I'm not sure that there's anything left to me. Don't let these shakes go on. It's time we had a break from it.
Man, that is still one of my favorite Blue Öyster Cult songs ever. Now, both of the songs that they submitted to the film can be heard on their Fire of Unknown Origin album, which came out later in 81 in October. And Vengeance, the one that they submitted that got rejected, is a great song. But to be honest, it is no Psychic Wars. So heavy metal ended up with by far the better of the 2 songs. So by rejecting it, they got rid of a really good song, but got a really classic, great tune. There's a third song on the Fires of Unknown Origin album called Heavy Metal, the Black and the Silver. So they really invested in this film and in the storytelling. And fun fact, Veteran of the Psychic Wars was co-written by Michael Moorcock, the author of the Elric of Melniboné books. If you've never read those, that is a kind of a high fantasy sword and sorcery book, but it is bizarre. It is so weird and great, great, great series. I highly recommend it. If you've never heard it or never read it, go get it. Okay, so now we're going to get to my favorite song on the heavy metal soundtrack, and this is by the mighty Black Sabbath. This is a song called The Mob Rules, and this was the first Black Sabbath recording to feature Vinny Appice on drums. He had replaced Bill Ward a little bit earlier the previous year. And their previous album, Heaven and Hell, like I mentioned earlier, was my discovery of Black Sabbath. And as great as that album was, this song, Mob Rules, was like that plus. It was even heavier than anything that had been featured on the Heaven and Hell album. And it features a really, really blazing guitar riff intro by Tony Iommi, their guitar player. So Mob Rules was included in the final segment, the Tarna story. And it's in a scene where a large mass of people are mutated into a barbarian army. The song would go on to be the title track of their next studio album, the second album to feature the monumental mountain range of a voice of none other than the legendary Ronnie James Dio. So we're going to give it a quick listen. This is The Mob Rules. Yes, that is Black Sabbath with The Mob Rules. Now that one, like I said, was going to eventually become this was from Heavy Metal Soundtrack, but it got featured later in November as the title track from their next album, Mob Rules. And that album is a little bit darker than Heaven and Hell had been the previous year. Really great album. And it features cover art by at that time at least, legendary Greg Hildebrand. And he was somebody who did a lot of these kind of like dark fantasy kind of paintings and was most known for book covers and things like that. But here he is doing this album cover for Black Sabbath, and just an amazing cover. Really dark. I saw Black Sabbath on the Mob Rules tour, and holy cow, what a show that was. That was amazing. The show centered mostly around songs from Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, with some kind of key songs from the Ozzy era as well. And it was just an amazing show. One of my favorite shows I've ever seen. All right, that's going to kind of wrap it up for us. I hope you really enjoyed kind of reliving. If you've seen the movie Heavy Metal before, I would love it if you would drop me a line and let me know, because I would love to know your memories of the film. If you haven't ever seen it, you can see it now. It's on a couple of streaming platforms, like I think Amazon, I think it is. And it's a pay thing, but you can also watch it on a couple of the free services like the Roku channel and Pluto. Is it Pluto? No, Tubi. That's what it is. Of course it is. It's on the Roku channel and on Tubi, and you'll get ads. But I will tell you that if you watch it on the Roku channel, you get far fewer ads. So I would recommend going and watching it there if you don't have whatever pay service it's on. And I think it's like $1.99. It may be $3.99, but I mean, just sit through a couple of commercial breaks and just watch it on the Roku channel. It is absolutely well worth it. It is very much of its time. It is, like at the time I was just coming out of high school, and here's this film was nothing like anything I'd ever seen before. It mixed a lot of, it was very sexual. There was a couple of like very sexy scenes in it. And like I said, boobs and bush at any chance that they had to put that in. So, it was something of my like coming of age. I guess it was. I was sort of emerging from my teen years and moving into my adult years. And this was something that seemed really edgy and really adult. And, I don't know. It just hit me at exactly the right time. I don't think I was a sheltered kid, but I was in a very rural area, let's say. So I felt kind of isolated from the greater society a lot of the times. And this was really sort of like my coming into my own, I think. So I have a lot of fondness for heavy metal, and I actually rewatched it again very recently, and it mostly really holds up. The animation looks a bit dated in some places, but it was cutting edge at the time. It was doing things that you just never saw before. And anyway, so I highly recommend it. I hope you'll go give it a watch. Now, like I said, if you have seen it before or you watched it for the first time, drop me a line and let me know. I would love to hear from you. You can reach me at modernmusicology1@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment where you see this episode posted on our socials. I'll be putting it out on our Facebook and our Insta and that kind of stuff in the Modern Musicology feed. So just drop a comment there and I'll definitely get to it. All right, we're going to take a quick listen on our way out for this week to Donald Fagen. This is an instrumental piece that he submitted that was included in the Cab Driver Future New York segment. So this is Donald Fagen playing us out. See you next time, everybody.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.